Hello, today we are continuing to plot points, but when we plot our points today, they're going to form a straight line. We are in linear algebra. We are drawing lines. So first it says plot points in a coordinate plane. So we're going to first review the coordinate plane. Our axes. We have an x-axis and a y-axis. The y-axis goes up and down because that letter is longer. It helps you remember which one's y. The other axis is x. These two divide our graph into 4 quadrants. Where everything is positive, that's quadrant 1. And then we go counterclockwise or to the left. This would be quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And then last, our origin. That's the middle of our graph, what we call 0, 0. So that point is the origin. For now, I'm not going to write that on there because I'm going to have to actually graph this function on here as well. So it says graph the function y equals 2x minus 1 with a domain of -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Then identify the range. Well, our domain represents what we're plugging into our function. We're going to plug things in for x and get out y, which is our range. So in order to do this, we are going to make a table. So I'm going to have you draw, we call this a table, but if you want to call it a chart, that's fine. We're going to plug numbers in for x, and we're going to get out y. Our equation, y equals 2x minus 1, is going to go in the middle. But we're not going to write y equals because we really have 2x minus 1. We're going to plug things in for x, and we're going to get y. It is equal to y, but we're going to just write y in this other column. So they tell us we're going to plug in these numbers for x. So -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. We're going to take these numbers, and wherever we see an x in our equation, we're going to replace it with whatever that number is. So first it says 2 times x, and x right here is first a -2. And then minus 1. We can actually plug this in our calculator just like it's seen there. So I'm going to look at my calculator, and I'm going to type in 2x, 2 times, -2 actually, 2 times, you could use the multiplication, I'm going to use the parentheses just like it looks, -2, and then minus 1. We get a -5. Then we're going to do the same thing, plug in a -1. So we're going to have 2 from our equation up here, times x, which this time it's a -1, and then subtract 1. So we're going to type in 2, and then parentheses, a -1, and then we're going to subtract 1. And we get a -3. Then we're going to plug in a 0. 2 times x, which is 0, and then subtract 1. Well, this one, you guys, you can do this in your head too. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 1 is -1. If you want to double check in your calculator, that's fine. 2 times 0, and then minus 1. If you're using a calculator on your iPad, this might not give you the exact same answer, so you need to be using this calculator instead of the one on your iPad or your phone or something. Then we're going to plug in a 1. 2 times 1, and subtract 1. Well, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Or you could plug it in the calculator. And then last, 2 times 2, and subtract 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So what we really need to do is plot our points x and then y. Here we have x, here we have y. So this first point would be -2, -5. Our next point is -1, -3. I'm going to list these all out. If you'd prefer to just look at this table and you can see that the point is 0, -1, that's fine. So this one is 1, 1, and this one is 2, 3. We only use this middle column to help us get from x to y. So let's plot these first. X is left to right first, and then y, which is up and down. So x is -2, so 1, 2. And then y is -5, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There, we plotted that first one. Then x is -1, so 1 on the left. And then -3 is down 1, 2, 3. Then 0 on my x-axis, I'm not going left and right, I'm staying in the middle. And then y is -1, or down 1. Then next, x is 1 to the right, and y is up 1. So notice these should be forming a straight line. If yours don't form a straight line, you need to go back to your table. You made a mistake. And then last, our point is 2 to the right, and y is 3. So all we did was plot those points. If you'd like, you can put a line through it. Make a nice straight line. The only question we have left to answer is what's our range? Our range is what we get out for our y value. So all of our y values, we're just going to list them. -5, -3, -1, 1, and 3. All I did was list the y values that I got out. Let's try another one. Alright, here's another one. I'm going to make my table, my xy table, with x and y. And my equation goes in the middle. We don't need to include y because we're going to put y right here. It's 3x minus 2. And our domain, what we're plugging into our equation, is -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So first, we're going to plug in a -2 for x. So we're taking out the letter x, and we're replacing it with a -2. So the x goes away, and we have a -2 there, and then -2. So if you want to plug that in your calculator, it should be 3 times -2. You can just put in parentheses. Your calculator knows that's multiplication. And then -2 gives us a -8. Then we're going to plug in a -1. First it's 3 times x, which is a -1. And then we're going to subtract 2. Well, we know 3 times -1 is -3. A -3 and a -2, they're all negatives. You should get a -5, but if you want to double check using your calculator, you can. -5. Then we're going to plug in a 0. 3 times 0, and then -2. Anything times 0 is 0, so 0 minus 2 is -2. And some of you might see a pattern here. We're going up by 3 each time, from -8 to -5, -2. Next, if we go up by 3 more again, -1, 0 would be a +1. Let's see if that would be right. We have 3 times x this time, which is 1. And then -0, or -2. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. Yep. And then last, 3 times 2 is 6. And 6 minus 2 is 4. And our pattern going up by 3 works. So if you want right now to list out your range, you can. Our range is our y values right here. What we get out for y, -8, -5, -2, 1, and 4. But we still need to plot our points x, y. Here's x, here's y. So first we have this point, -2, -8. If I go -2 to the left, -8, well, there's -7. -8 would be off the graph. So if you don't want to graph that, that's fine. It doesn't fit. Then we have -1, -5. So -1 is to the left one. And -5, y is up and down. -5 would be down 5. Then we have 0, -2. X going left to right first. We don't go left and right because it's 0. -2 is just down 2. You can see this is starting to form a nice straight line, and my next point will be over here somewhere. It's going to be 1, 1. So 1 to the right and up 1. And last, 2, 4. X is 2 to the right, and Y is up 4. So put a nice straight line through those points. And you can put arrows on it to show that we could go on. We could have plugged in more numbers, but they just had us type in those numbers. Flip over to the back side. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to become really good at making tables. So I'm going to make my table. And I need to write X and Y. I'm going to plug in numbers for X to figure out what Y is. And my equation goes in the middle. Negative 1/3 X and plus 2. I put the negative on the top. Don't put it on both because then two negatives make a positive. So I'm just going to put it with the 1. And then this time our domain, what we're plugging in is negative 6, negative 3, 0, 3, and 6. And the reason why we're plugging in these numbers is because the denominator of our fraction is a 3. In order to avoid getting really weird decimals, we're doing multiples of 3 so that we make sure each time that we have a nice whole number. Back here we didn't have any fractions, so we could just go by ones. So for example, if our equation had a 1/2 in it, we'd go by 2's. We'd have negative 4, negative 2, 0, 2, and 4 if we had the fraction 1/2. But since we have 1/3, we're going to use multiples of 3. So let's take a look. First, we're going to plug in, let's see, a negative 6. So we have negative 1/3 times negative 6. And then add 2. Now this one, we need to be careful plugging this into our calculator. In parentheses, put your fraction negative 1 divided by 3. That's negative 1/3. And then if you want to just put the other one in parentheses too, you can. Or if you'd prefer to just do times negative 6, that works too. And then plus 2. It should give us 4. Because a third 6 times, well, a third 3 times would give us 1, so a third 6 times would give us 2, and plus 2 more gives us 4. Then we're going to do the same thing again, negative 1/3, but this time times negative 3, and then add 2. So in my calculator, I'm going to put in parentheses negative 1 divided by 3. There's my fraction. Oops. Negative 1 divided by 3 times a negative 3, and then add 2. I get 3. So let's try the next one. We have negative 1/3. We're going to plug in a 0, and then add 2. Well, anything times 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. Now some of you might see 4, 3, 2. The next number is probably going to be a 1 and then a 0. If you can figure out the pattern, that's awesome. You don't need to even fill out the rest of the table because you know what's going to come next. We're forming a nice straight line, so it should be a pattern. So our points, x, y, x is negative 6, and y is a positive 4. So here's x, here's y. So x is negative 6 to the left, y is up 4. Then we have negative 3, 3. Right there. So negative 3 is to the left 3, and then positive 3 on the y-axis is up 3. Then we have 0, 2. So we're not going left and right, we're just going y-axis is up 2. And then we have 3, 1. So x is 3 to the right, and positive 1 is up 1. And then last, 6, 0. So 6 to the right of my x-axis, and then we're not going up or down. And draw your line through it. There's our nice straight line. If you have one point that's instead maybe over here or something, you know, hey, we made a mistake. That one doesn't fit with the rest of the points. And then last, our range is what we get out, or output. Our range is our y values. So we got out 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. All right, last one. This is the same thing, except they already have our table for us. This is an XY table. I know that hours worked is X because it's on the X axis. And I know our pay is Y because it's on the Y axis. So it says the table shows the number of hours worked and the corresponding pay in dollars. So let's plot these points. X is 1 to the right, and then up 750. I'm going to take a guess because it's close to 10, but not quite. A little bit less. So we plotted that one. Then 2 to the right, up to 15. That's right between 10 and 20. And then 3, we're at 22.5, so there's 20, a little bit more. We're forming a nice straight line, so it should go straight. And then at 5 hours, way over here, we're at 37.50. So here's 40. 37 is a little bit less. And then at 8 hours, way over on the right here, we're going to make $60. So we already did part A, graph the data. We did that. Does the graph represent a function? Why or why not? Can we put a nice straight line through those points? Use the edge of your notes or a piece of paper or a folder to see, do they form a straight line? So a function means it's a linear function forming a line. So yes, this one does form a function. Yes, it is a function. It says why or why not? I would say because it forms a line, a straight line. And then last it says describe the change in hours worked and pay. So if our hours worked goes up, the more hours we work, our pay also goes up. Another word for goes up is increases. So I'm going to say as the number of hours worked increases, the pay also increases. That's just describing what's happening in this graph. So the more hours we work, the more money we get paid. There we go. Your homework is 4.1b. If you're in class, I would like you to do our activity first.